Hello, let's talk about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So we've already talked about what Siddhartha Gautama's life was like. We know he was born as a Hindu prince and that he led a very, very privileged and very, very sheltered life until he was almost 30 years old. When he finally left the palace for the first time in his life, he came to realize that life had suffering. People got sick, people died. Things were hard. Some people didn't have enough to eat. They didn't have clothes to wear. And so he saw this suffering for the first time, and he decided that he was going to go on a spiritual journey to find out how to stop it. So for 6 years, he doesn't eat a lot. He is a monk, and he joins this group of people that, according to Hindu tradition, simply ate the seeds of the trees that fell into their laps. So you have to imagine this very privileged person who goes from having excess to having not enough. And he develops this idea of the middle path where it is okay to have things and it's okay to have some, but moderation is really best. When he comes up with this idea, Buddhists believe that he became the enlightened one and became the Buddha, which is a title, not necessarily his name. It simply means one who is enlightened. So Buddha began teaching what he learned about following the middle path, and Buddhism began to spread around Asia. So these Four Noble Truths, we're actually going to find them in Discovery Education, chapter 6.3. So the Four Noble Truths are a way of action for people to follow. This is the first set of guidelines that Buddhists live by. The first of the Four Noble Truths is that all life is full of suffering. The Buddha taught that everyone suffers, but this does not mean that happiness is impossible. Buddhists believe that every human being may be unhappy at one time or another, but everyone gets sick, everyone dies, anybody may experience loss, anyone may experience the dishonesty of a loved one, insults, injuries, and other unhappiness throughout your life. It simply means that the fact that you're alive means you're a candidate for bad things to happen to you. So on my slide sheet, I need to write the first of the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism is that all life is full of suffering. And in my own words, that explanation simply means that anyone who is alive can have bad things happen to them. The second of the Four Noble Truths is that the cause of human suffering is desire and attachment, or feeling connected. So if we accept, like the Buddhists do, that all life is full of suffering, the reason that we suffer is because of desire and attachment. So the Buddha taught his followers that everything comes through the senses or the mind causes desires. For example, people may have strong desires for food, for pleasant experiences, and for possessions. We suffer because we cannot have things that we want. Therefore, Buddhists teach that people must try to avoid feeling these desires too strongly as they go about their daily lives. What this is basically saying is you want things and you can't have them, and so you are unhappy. It doesn't matter how much money or how little money you have. It simply means that there is something in the world that you are unable to have. And the fact that you're alive means that you want it simply because you can't have it. So the second of the Four Noble Truths is that the cause of human suffering is desire. We suffer because we cannot have things that we want. Back to our text. The third of the Four Noble Truths is that the cure for suffering is ending desire. If we're unhappy, and we're unhappy because we suffer, to stop suffering, we should stop wanting things. So Buddhism does not teach that feelings and pleasures are bad. Instead, Buddhists believe that it is clinging to cravings that cause suffering. Therefore, Buddhism teaches that people must free themselves from these cravings. Buddhism emphasizes that people should live simply and be willing to let go of desires for material wealth and social advancement. This is sort of the idea behind minimalism. People who go and sell everything they own to live in an RV and travel around the world and have very few possessions live in a minimalist kind of a way. They don't want the McMansion or the shiny new car. On my paper, I'm going to write the cure for suffering is ending desire. You have to let go of material things. Avoid wealth and social advancement. The last of the Four Noble Truths is a tie-in to the next thing we're going to look at. That is the Eightfold Path. The way to overcome desire and end suffering is to follow the Eightfold Path. And this is a system for people to follow in their daily lives. The system was supposed to help people to free themselves from suffering, and it is sometimes called the middle way. Its teaching helps lift people to live a good life, somewhere between a life without any material goods and eating seeds that fall into your lap, and a life devoted to wealth and ease. So the Buddha also accepted the Hindu ideas of karma and reincarnation. By following the Eightfold Path and living a good and honest life, one could achieve nirvana. Nirvana is an important idea in Buddhism because it is the idea of heavenly peace and freedom from desire and suffering. So just like Hinduism teaches that the goal is to join Brahma in the universe, the goal of Buddhists is to achieve nirvana and become enlightened. So to finish off our notes for the Four Noble Truths, we need to write that the way to stop wanting things is to follow the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path provided a system for people to follow that would allow themselves to be free from pain and suffering. The goal here was nirvana. Moving along to the Eightfold Path. The material that you would learn this from, I actually posted back in Google Classroom. And it is this slide called the Eightfold Path. You are only responsible for knowing the names of the steps. We're going to go through them and put them in our slides, but you don't need to write out the explanation for each one like we did with the Four Noble Truths. So, the first part of the Eightfold Path is right understanding. Just like there was a tie-in from the Four Noble Truths to the Eightfold Path, the first part of the Eightfold Path is knowing the Four Noble Truths. You can't have one without the other. They're very dependent on each other. So I'm going to say number one, right understanding. The second part of the Eightfold Path is right thought. Think kindly of others. Avoid dwelling on the past or the future. The Eightfold Path you're going to see is very concerned with how the individual treats and behaves towards other people. It's much less concerned with pleasing a god or doing the right thing to make different gods happy so that they can receive something in return, and it's much more focused on the human-to-human interaction. So if you are a Buddhist, you need to think kindly of other people and not hold grudges. Avoid dwelling on the past. So number two would be right thought. The third part of the Eightfold Path is right speech. Tell the truth, don't gossip, and don't speak badly of other people. Again, you can see that it's focused on how your individual actions could affect other people. If you lie and gossip and slander other people, they're going to be affected and your own reputation would suffer. The fourth part of the Eightfold Path is right action. Act kindly toward all living things. Some Hindus take this really far and they are vegan and they don't even kill mosquitoes. That's called Jainism, and it's a branch of these Eastern religions that is extremely careful to not cause harm to anything that is alive. Number 5 is right work. Do a job that does not harm others. So if you are a Buddhist, you need to make sure that your occupation, your life work, is one that is not harmful to somebody else. When you do things, you need to make sure that the impact on those around you is not going to harm people. Number 6 is right effort. Be determined to cleanse your mind. Think good thoughts. It's really hard to act correctly towards other people and to put other people's interests before yours if your own thoughts are not positive. So if you're stuck in a negative mindset, it's going to be really difficult to put the correct amount of effort into behaving nicely towards other people. So number 6 is telling you to get your head in a good space. You need to put all of your effort into doing these things. You can't just do it halfway. Number 7 is mindfulness, right mindfulness. Be fully aware of what you are doing, always with a concern for others. If you know Mrs. Lacey, she's put a lot of time and effort into teaching you guys about mindfulness and being present in the moment and letting go of everything else that's happening and just being where you are right now and doing your best there. Being present is one of the big ideas in Buddhism. And with that in mind, it's really hard to maintain that mindfulness and that present attitude if you are under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So with number 7 in mind, most Buddhists avoid drugs and alcohol simply because it's not possible to maintain mindfulness if you're under the influence of a chemical substance. The last part of the Eightfold Path is right concentration. Be sure to use intense concentration during meditation in order to focus on being one with whatever situation you're in. And this is kind of like developing that mental toughness. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of mental strength to do these things in the Eightfold Path. And so Buddhists use meditation to help them focus and gain that mental strength in order to do that. And so meditation is extremely important to Buddhists because it helps them build that mental strength and mental focus. I hope that this helps you understand how both the life of Siddhartha Gautama and the major beliefs of Buddhism with the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path work. If you have any other questions, as always, please send me an email.